Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays post-game shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020 or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. The Rays leave the tying run at second base in extra innings. It is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here at 12:32 on this early Thursday morning. This Rays postgame edition show is live from the WHBC studio in Clearwater, Florida. Number to call the show to talk Rays is 877-566-1020. You can also tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official, and we'll read your tweets on the air and respond to them. Any questions, any comments, any concerns that you may be having right now. In 11 innings, it was the Rays falling to the Washington Nationals by a score of 9-7. It was very much a back-and-forth affair as the Rays rallied 3 times throughout this game. They rallied in the bottom of the first, in the 7th and 8th innings, rather, as part of really one rally, and then they also rallied in the bottom of the 10th. So coming down from multiple deficits, they were showing a lot of grit and a lot of competitiveness, all those things that you would like to see for a team right now that is still doing very, very well at 39-24, still looking for that also elusive 40th win on the season. They are still 15 games above 500. Also, of note, just because of how much we discussed yesterday, they dropped to 16-14 at home, and is hitting a problem in Tropicana Field? Well, certainly tonight it was not, as there was 16 runs combined between the two teams, and one of the high scoring affairs that the Rays have had. 62 games into the season. Narratives that we always like to track. The Rays go 3 for 13 with runners in scoring position and leave a total of 10 men on base. The 2 extra innings probably have a pretty decent deal to do with those at-bats, but they went 3 for 10 yesterday with runners in scoring position and left 12 men on base then. So in just a 2-game series in which the Rays split with the Nats, they leave a total of 22 men on base, and they go 6 for 23 with runners in scoring position, which is good for about a 260 average. So it's not as anemic as a stretch as we've seen so far this season. Of course, we'll never forget the 3 for 56 and things like that. Of course, we all are still having nightmares about those. But it's been a problem with this team. It's going to continue to be a problem with this team. It's usually when they lose, that is a good part of it. But of course, any night you give up 9 runs, as rarely as I do this, I think we may need to turn some attention to the pitching. As far as who we assign the blame to for tonight's loss, is certainly that is something we will have to do. Shane McClanahan, not a terrific start for him as he goes just 3 innings, giving up 3 runs on 5 hits, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. It has been a rough last couple starts for Sugar Shane McClanahan. His last time out against the New York Yankees, he went just 3 1/3 of 4 runs. So after a stretch where he was really having a lot of success and, the 5 inning scoreless, starts and things like that, that afternoon game against Kansas City really comes to mind when talking about that. But the last couple of starts has been rough. It seems like control is an issue, and not maybe in the way that you would think traditionally as far as missing pitches outside the zone, although, of course, with the 3 walks over 3 innings, that was an issue in and of itself. But really from the get-go, from Shane McClanahan, ever since he made his first career start in April of this season, he's just thrown very hittable strikes. And when you're a power pitcher like Shane McClanahan, maybe even like a Tyler Glasnow at times, thinking back to 2018 when he gave up a lot of home runs with the Rays. Sometimes those guys' mentality, perhaps, and maybe anytime you throw a pitch right down the middle, it's not necessarily intentional. But when you're throwing 97, 98, 99, 100, that's not enough. You also need to place it in a favorable spot on the corners. Maybe even get some elevation or down at the knees. But where the home runs were coming from, because yes, that was another part of McClanahan's stat line. Over 3 innings, allowed a couple of home runs. It was just pitches, middle, and fastballs, both of them, in fact. A 2-run homer in the first to Juan Soto, who obviously is not a very favorable matchup, as he's really been tearing up Major League pitching since he became a big leaguer at 19 years old on that World Series Nats team. And then also Ryan Zimmerman, who had a 2-home run game himself, hit a solo shot off of Shane in the 3rd inning. And again, those are both fastballs. The one to Soto was true middle. The 1-2, Zimmerman did have a little bit of rise on it, but it was middle part of the plate, to say the least. When looking at just maybe the counts to see if that has anything to do with it, Soto was on a 2-1 count, so Soto probably was looking fastball there. And then in the 3rd inning to Zimmerman, that went 363 feet to right. So for the right-hander, that was he did go the opposite way with it on a fastball that was actually up and away a little bit. So that was a problem for Shane in his last start against the Yankees, was just pitching away to the right-handers to a point where it was getting pretty predictable, and the Yankees were more than happy to go the opposite way, mostly for singles, thankfully, with the short porch over there in Yankee Stadium. And this time it cost him with the home run. To Soto, it was just a middle pitch, and Juan took him 323 feet to center, pretty much dead center, knocked off the batter's eye. So it was timed up well, and everything like that. So to me, that's what I would say about Shane. The control, throwing hittable strikes much too often has been an issue. And that's, of course, connected to being behind in the count. If you start a guy off 2-0, 3-1, those traditional kind of hitters counts, and you're forced to throw strikes, well, that's when you want to see, a guy go Greg Maddux and start painting the corners. We have not seen much of that from McClanahan. He is either giving you kind of middle, or he's missing quite a bit to the arm side rather than the glove side, which is a bit odd. That's of course a mechanical issue that he's having. I haven't really noticed that be too much of an issue, but tonight when he was missing with the fastball, it was down and away from righties in that same spot. It didn't really happen to any lefties that I can recollect. So that was him trying to kind of go away to the righties like he has done a lot of lately, and just missing. So whenever he tries to paint the corners, basically my point is he's not very effective in doing so, and it results in non-competitive pitches, a term we haven't used in a while, and just results in some easy takes for hitters, which jacks the pitch count up as well. He threw about 30 pitches in the first inning, which from the get-go you knew was going to put a little bit of a a rein on how far he could go into the game. We spent a little bit of discussion yesterday talking about maybe what the Rays' plan is for him. It seems like it doesn't really even feel like they're stretching him out at this point. It seems like he is just deadlocked into a 5-inning, 80-pitch maximum. Whichever comes first is when he ends up getting pulled. And tonight got fairly close to that, but did not really hit either of those markers. But, through 77 pitches, so that was obviously the concern. You weren't going to bring him out for a fourth inning when he hasn't thrown more than 80 pitches in a start this season, especially when things aren't going too well for you. Thankfully, this 2-game series was bookended with off days, the off day Monday and an off day tomorrow. So as far as taxing the bullpen, that is not too much of a concern at the moment. Colin McHugh also giving the Rays 3 very strong and quick innings and only 29 pitches, 22 of which were for strikes. McHugh looked pretty fantastic tonight. The breaking balls did have sharp break to them and all those things. So that gave the rest of the guys a little bit of a lift. Fairbanks and Fireisen were the main guys out of the pen that didn't end up coming in. And honestly, with everyone, as there was 7 pitchers total used tonight, they were getting pretty close to emptying the bullpen, and they emptied the bench of position players as well. Josh Fleming, who is due to pitch Sunday against the Orioles, said that he had his spikes on in preparation to maybe perhaps play some defense or pinch run or something. I don't know. But Fleming did play as a defensive replacement late in games in college when he played D3 baseball. I believe for Webster University, if I'm remembering correctly, but that could be completely wrong. But either way, you knew things were getting dire, and maybe Josh Fleming was going to have to come into a game kind of reminiscent to Brendan McKay, although he's a two-way player. Coming in to pinch in some of those National League games in 2019, it's just a kind of weird side. Jalen Beeks is who I meant to say. He's definitely not a two-way player, but I think he did have a pinch hit a couple years ago. So we're getting close to some real oddities, and it was very much a strange game. 4 hours and 19 minutes. I was there in attendance in Tropicana Field, and the game definitely did wear on to anyone who stayed glued to their TV, or maybe anyone that was among the over 7,500 fans at the Trop tonight. Baseball games really should not be longer than 2.5 or 3 hours, if you ask me, and 4 hours and 19 minutes is nowhere close to that mark. And it was a shame, I guess, that it goes to extras, that they had to use the pitchers. But again, an off day tomorrow and a weekend series against the Orioles. So it's not like they're in an incredibly daunting position. I think Shane was going to come out of the game either way with pitch count. But it was also a situation when he left the game. It was tied 3-3, so he still very much had a chance. And if you could just pitch well the rest of the way, I think the thinking was that they were going to come out on the winning end. And I guess ultimately you would say that the pitching didn't really come through, although I would say for the most part it did. Jeffrey Springs gave up a 2-run homer to Ryan Zimmerman in the 5th inning that gave the Nats a 5-3 lead. And of course the Rays were able to come back with that solo home run by Joey Wendell in the 8th inning to tie things up. But then outside of that, Colin McHugh, 3 scoreless innings. And then pretty much the rest of the runs that were allowed were, the extra inning runners. And yes, you would say that the relievers that came in extras did not pitch particularly well. Although I would say that's never an easy situation to come into when you're starting an inning and you've got a man at second. It really changes everything. But if you really want to hold them to a high standard, which the Rays, I think, in many ways led by their bullpen, then you would say you need to do a little bit better of a job holding down those runs. They gave up 2 runs in both the 10th and the 11th, and really no matter what the team is, I don't care if you're the Yankees, the Dodgers, whoever, giving up 2 runs in the top of the 10th and the 11th, that's putting yourself in a little bit of a bind. Thankfully, the offense was able to put up a 2 spot in the 10th, thanks to an RBI triple by Arozarena, and of course they're able to single him in by another clutch hit for Wendell, and boy was he really effective tonight coming off the bench. But then they gave up another 2 runs in the top of the 11th. The pressure back on the offense, which with this Rays team this year is never really where you want it to be. They got off to a really good start. Mike Zunino in a pinch hit situation walked to make it 1st and 2nd. Margot struck out, but then Yandy Diaz with one out, first and second, grounded out to first, but moved the runners to second and third. And so in a 2-run deficit, you have the tying run at second base. All you need is a base hit to tie the game and potentially send it to a 12th or even give yourself a chance at a walk-off. And instead, Austin Meadows, who did have a bit of a rough night at the plate, to say the least, an 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts and a walk. So, in 6 plate appearances, did not give you a whole heck of a lot. And the fact that he started off 0 for 2, or rather 0 for 1 with a walk, and then added the golden sombrero after that with strikeouts, swinging in the 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th, including the one in the 11th to end the game, was a bit of a rough stretch for him. So maybe Meadows is coming off of the real high point that he was on when he was really slugging and carrying this lineup for a bit, an average that's down to 237, and really did have a terrific month in May, was certainly the Rays' best hitter that month, and had a great deal to do with the 11-game win streak and then the 5-game streak to follow. And they've won, at this point, 20 out of their last 25. And as I said, they have, in large part, Austin Meadows to thank for that. So that he's maybe coming off this hot stretch that he's on, that's fine. Someone else is going to have to pick up the slack. And as Dave Wills says on the radio, you're never going to have all 9 guys red hot, but the hope is that maybe you can get 3 of them going at the same time and you get some runs in bunches. And so if the situation is that Meadows is going to be coming down a little bit, someone's going to pick up the slack. I think Arozarena is probably the number one candidate to do just that. Is his 3 for 5 tonight with 3 knocked in proved to be very valuable and helped keep the Rays in the game, especially with that RBI triple, as I mentioned, in the 10th. That pretty much saved the Rays' biscuits at that point. Brandon Lau is another guy who's batting, 060 this year against left-handed pitching, and is batting 188 straight up. He had an 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts tonight. Was all the way down in the 7th spot in the order, which is certainly a low point for Lau. These guys don't get too offended really by this kind of stuff with the way Rays do things, but I think a lot of players on a lot of other teams would have a problem with that kind of demotion. And Lau, a guy that's extremely critical on himself, he's really the only one that can get himself out of this rut that he's in. A guy that, coming into the season you expect to be a big contributor to the top of the lineup, kind of an everyday cleanup hitter is what we were hoping, because his career splits righty-lefty have been fairly even as he's crushed any kind of pitcher that you throw out there. And while he has had his moments, he had 2 home runs off of left-handed pitching in a game against the Blue Jays in Dunedin a little bit earlier. That was probably one of the high points, and I think is kind of settling into another low point this year, as again he batted 7 in the order. So those are all guys that are candidates to maybe pick up the slack for Meadows. Yandy Diaz is another guy that I would say is on an absolute tear. He goes 2 for 4 with 2 walks tonight, and so he is just getting bases like crazy. And on base right now at 397, an average at 263. So in hitting number 2 in the order against a left-handed starter in Patrick Corbin, that gave the lineup a pretty big boost as well. So, and of course they score 7 runs. This is not to say that the offense is performing extremely poorly, but there was moments where they had chances. And the reason why I'm a little bit reluctant to maybe put more of the blame on the pitchers, because it seemed like outside of Shane's start, yes, which was not good, and maybe the Springs homer, but that's just a couple of pitches that maybe if it goes the other way, we're talking something different, and then the rest of the runs are given up in extra innings. So that's a tough pill to swallow, certainly, from that regard. So at this point, what we're going to do, we're going to take a short break. When we return, we will get more in depth into our discussion of tonight's 9-7 loss to the Washington Nationals as they split this 2-game interleague series. If we have anyone listening at this point and you'd like to call in, share your thoughts, we would love to hear what you have to say. Number to call during the break is 877-566-1020. And also later on in the show at the very end, we will preview Friday's contest, Friday night against the Baltimore Orioles, so make sure to stick around for that as well. In the meantime, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Rays Post Game on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBC Official. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM. Sports Radio 636. Sports Radio
HBC. And at 12:51 on this Thursday morning, we return on the William Haynes Show, this Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show. Again, number to call the show is 877-566-1020 to talk Rays. But without further ado, tonight's 9-7 loss in 11 innings drops the Rays to 15 games above 500. Still important to remember, they are now 39-24. This also drops them to 16-14 at home. So they have been, no surprise, significantly better on the road than they have been at Tropicana Field. It drops the Washington Nationals to 25 or improves them rather to 25-33, and they are now 12-18 on the road. And if anyone's wondering, they're 7 games back of first and are in 4th place in the National League East. New York Mets lead that division at 30-24. And then for the Rays in the American League East standings, their loss, they still hold a game and a half division lead thanks to Boston's loss tonight in Fenway against the Houston Astros. So the Red Sox have now lost that that best of 3 to Houston, and will be going into tomorrow a game and a half out of first place. So the Rays with an off day tomorrow, no matter what happens, Friday will still be in all the first place, and with the weekend series against the Orioles, you would think the Rays would be in good positioning, at least for right now, to hold on to that division lead. The Yankees have won 2 in a row. They are 5.5 games back at 33-29, and of course they make up a game tonight with the Rays loss. They have won their last 2 games in Minnesota against the Twins. And then also the Toronto Blue Jays at 31-28. They are 6 games back of first. For the victorious Nationals, they had 9 runs on 10 hits, 1 error, and for the losing Rays, 7 runs on 8 hits, 1 error for them. The winning pitcher for the Nationals was Brad Hand, his 2 innings of relief, over, of course, which he gave up 1 run, improves him to 3-2. It was Tanner Rainey collecting his first save of the year in the bottom of the 11th and collecting the loss for the Rays. His, I believe, second extra inning loss this year, as he had that, or at least a blown save in Boston in the 9th inning last year. Last couple months ago. His loss drops him to 2-3. He had that 1 run in the top of the 11th. Or the 1 earned run at least. He ended up giving 2 runs total. With the runner at second base, gave up an RBI double to the 8-man Starlin Castro, and then a single to Victor Robles, which made it runners at the corners with nobody out, and then a sac fly by Josh Harrison extended the Nats' lead to 9-7 going into the bottom of the 11th, in which the Rays were not able to score a single run, including the runner that was at second base with nobody out. But that is neither here nor there. Also, the game was in 4 hours and 19 minutes. See, it's so late. I'm losing my mind here. I'm trying to keep it together. 4 hours, 19 minutes in front of a paid attendance at Tropicana Field of 7,616. The lineup that Kevin Cash put out there today: defense first in the outfield from left to right. It was Austin Meadows in left, Brett Phillips in center. In right field, it was Manuel Margot. And then in the infield from third to first, Mike Brasso at third, Taylor Walls at shortstop, Brandon Lau at second base, Yandy Diaz at first. Francisco Mejia did the catching, and the designated hitter was Randy Arozarena. So the lineup, no surprise here, pretty much as we predicted last night against the left-handed starter Patrick Corbin. They were going to stack the righties, and they do just that. The only thing, maybe variance, they elected to have Austin Meadows play the field in left instead of Arozarena, so Randy gets basically the half day off as the DH, and it seems like maybe that gave him a little bit of a boost as he was able to go tonight. Talking about Randy, 3 for 5. And a lot of runs driven in 3, in fact. So that was good to see. And then outside of that, Mejia replaces Zanino as kind of they're on that day-on, day-off rotation. And then outside of that, everything was pretty much wash. Kiermaier gets a day off as well, although he comes in as a pinch runner in the 10th inning and then comes in to play center field and even got an at-bat. It was a leadoff walk in the 11th, so did get quite a bit of action at the back end of the game, in fact. But Brett Phillips started the game in center. Didn't get too much from him as he goes 0 for 3 with a strikeout. So that is what it is, and you move on. The order in which these guys hit: Manuel Margot led off, followed by Yandy Diaz and Austin Meadows. Randy Arozarena was the cleanup hitter, followed by Brasso and Mejia, and a 7-8-9 of Brandon Lau, Taylor Walls, and Brett Phillips. Things continue to be as they have while they're waiting for Randy to heat back up, which I would say he's certainly done, and who has hit leadoff probably more than anyone else this year. Margot has kind of taken his place. Randy has heated up. Margot has cooled off, so I think they're going to switch places. Maybe Margot starts to hit fourth or fifth like he has lately, prior to getting the promotion to the leadoff spot, and then Randy will move back up to the leadoff spot, I would imagine, maybe as early as this weekend, to be quite honest. Yandy, who is having the best stretch of his season so far, and maybe if even go as far as to say close to his best stretch since 2019, as I really did not see much of anything from him in 2020 other than weak opposite field ground ball singles, because of course his swing was all out of whack. We're seeing a lot more of the hard hit line drives, although I believe he did have one of those soft kind of opposite field hits, and he's always good for one of those, certainly, and then throwing a couple more walks, and Yandy Diaz is certainly doing his thing right now. So I think with Lau and Meadows may be cooling off, and if Yandy stays where he has, absolutely you want to keep him in the 2 spot, especially against left-handed pitching, because he is really effective right now. And then Randy, the righty, hitting cleanup against a lefty, that certainly worked out well. Brasso in the 5 spot, 0 for 2, but he did have a run knocked in that was on a sac fly in the first, so he did give you a little bit, but then popped up with a runner at first and second with 1 out in the third, so he did leave a little chicken on the bone there as well. And then, of course, really the only notable thing, and we mentioned it already, was Brandon Lau's demotion to the 7 spot. I think that's mostly, if not entirely, due to the left-handed starter Patrick Corbin on the mound, but he has not been hitting terrific lately. He did get the off day yesterday, so typically, at least right now, the Rays aren't going to play him against lefties, but to give him 4 days off in a row, I don't really think is advantageous. I don't think that's the right way to bring a guy out of a slump, is to keep him out of the batter's box. I think he's going to have to kind of hit his way out of the slump, is really, that's what they say is the only way to do that. So if you're going to have him in the lineup at all, you limit the consequential at-bats potentially if you can. Just surround him with guys who aren't doing too well either right now, hitting behind Francisco Mejia, but is protected a little bit by Taylor Walls, and I'm surprised I went half an hour into the program, if I did, without mentioning Taylor Walls and congratulating him on the first home run of his major league career, and I'm very excited that I was there to see it in person. Taylor Walls, an alumnus of Florida State University, myself, a current student at Florida State University, so of course repping the garnet and gold, Taylor Walls. That alone makes me a fan of his, but I'm also been very impressed with the season that he's been having so far. He's played only 3 or 4 weeks into his big league career, but already has 4 doubles, a home run, and to his credit is batting 245 and an on base of 373. So not only is getting some hits, but is also walking a decent bit, and looks pretty good on the base path. We heard the report from Durham that he is a pretty aggressive base runner, and I'm sure things are operated a little bit differently at the big league level as far as stolen bases and taking signs at third and everything. He's run a little bit less, but did have a stolen base. I want to say that's his first, but I can't confirm that. Actually, I believe I can confirm that. It was his second career stolen base. And then if you're wondering, 2 others, Kiermaier's fourth, and Arozarena, by the way, not to get off the topic of Walls, but Arozarena already with his 10th stolen back, so I think he's easily on pace for a 2020, maybe a 25 season, talking about stolen bases and home runs. So who would have known when the Rays traded away one of their top pitching prospects, Matthew Libator, that this was the kind of guy that they were getting in return. But of course, I need not even say that about Randy Arozarena at this point. But back to Taylor Walls, not only as I think he's flashed certainly some potential, and not only potential, but I mean it's being used in tangible ways. It's not just, oh, we're hearing about this guy's swing and he really puts together great at bats. No, I mean we are seeing the results on the field, and culminated with the first career homer for him tonight. Him also being a switch hitter not only adds an interesting dynamic into the lineup, but of course gives him probably the best chance to see the best pitches in any given at bat. And the fact that they can have him and Mejia, they now have 2 switch hitters in the lineup. That makes it incredibly hard to match up against with the bullpen late in games, and I think makes it tough to get outs against the bottom of the order with this team when you have Frankie Mejia hitting 6th and Walls hitting 8th. As I said, you got to be careful with who you bring in, because these are no slumps, and they're guaranteed to have the righty-lefty advantage anytime they step in the box. So that's another advantage that Walls brings to the table as well. And had, I would say, fairly big shoes to fill with the departure of Willy Adames. And Taylor Walls hasn't disappointed. Dare I say he's been as good as a defender as Willy, and I don't think any of us could really argue that he's been a better offensive player. I mean, just a month into his big league career than Willy Adames has had. At this point you would consider year 4 or year 3.5, however you want to look at it, as he was promoted to the bigs during 2018. So I think, not that this conversation needs to be had too much more right now, but Adames, I think, was certainly at his apex. He was as developed as he was going to be, and the fact that they've got a young prospect in Walls playing as good as he is, and a guy that was talked about as the best defender that the Rays have in their entire organization, period. And I think he's showing that off with really fundamental play. You see him square up to the ground balls, to get 2 hands on the ball at all times, straighten the body to throw. Is certainly a more conventional approach to what Willie did, just kind of running, wheeling and dealing, slinging the ball with the sidearm on the run, which is great that Willie was able to make those plays, but I think we would all rather, just put yourself in a better position to make those plays, and you don't have to, be on the highlight reel. And I think guys like that, like Walls, kind of get lost in the conversation of great defenders because maybe they're not making the flashy plays, but what's not talked about enough is what they are doing to keep themselves from having to make the flashy play, a play that maybe Adames has to make a diving stop or a crazy throw on. Taylor Walls doesn't have to, because he's in a little bit better position, and he's able to square up to the ball a little bit more. He's able to receive it into the glove a little bit better, and so he can take his time, straighten out, and make a good solid throw to first base. And there are defensive metrics that attempt to do that, but to me, with what I just described, it's really hard to put a number, a quantitative value on that. And then you combine that with what he's doing offensively right now, and I think we're all pleased. And I think with Taylor Walls, I think we all owe him a good amount, because he is putting to rest the call-up Wander crowd And I think I think we should talk about this right now because of who the Rays just faced in Juan Soto, who is just now 22 years old, made his big league debut at 19. He is 22. And so Juan Soto, we're talking about the slugger for the Nationals, probably one of the only hitters I can think of that was brought up that early and was able to have such success right away, as he was a big part of that Nats World Series run. But you compare that maybe to a guy like Jared Kelenic, who with the Seattle Mariners, he came over from the Mets in that Edwin Diaz trade, is 21 years old, and he was called up about a month ago, and in 80 plus at bats, he was batting .096 and was really just struggling at the plate. 26 strikeouts in there as well, so striking out a quarter of his at bats, which is certainly not very good. So I've not had a chance to really watch him much with the Mariners, but the stats I think really tell the story. And Jared Kelenic for the Mariners, he was a guy that, kind of like Wander Franco, everyone was calling up. The lineup for Seattle was really struggling. There's also some issues with the Mariners front office and criticisms. They had a guy that I guess was fired or had to step down because of some rather abrasive and unfortunate comments that he made. So there was certainly internal pressures that they had to bring him up. There was really people throughout baseball were accusing them of service time manipulation, that they were keeping him in the minors because, he's playing so great in AAA. It's he needs to be a big leaguer. It's just time. Well, they bring him up, and he really, really struggles. They send him back to AAA. And the reason I bring this up in the way that I did, two sides of the same coin. Yes, if you call up Wander Franco today, or when they had traded Adames instead of calling up Walls, there was a chance he could have been a phenom like Juan Soto, and it's a storybook type thing. And Soto at 22 years old is being considered throughout the game maybe the next Ted Williams, which was certainly without a doubt the best hitter of his generation. Although there was a lot of terrific players, don't get me wrong. Joe DiMaggio, who he was almost traded for, which is a terrific story. But either way, but there was also a decent chance, probably a 50-50 shot, that Wander Franco ends up being like Jared Kelenic, and bats under 100 in his first career, 100 at bats, just 10 hits in his first 100 at bats, something like that. That would have been really disastrous. Some guys respond better than others, but I think for anyone, baseball is I think really such a high pressure, performance driven, numbers driven sport. And so if you're not having success, it really does wear on you. And also with Franco, a guy that has not really had, at least to my knowledge, really a significant first career slump. I mean, has been absolutely mashing ever since he was signed by the Rays and started making his way through the minor league system. Really until going up until this year, every season of minor league ball he had played, he had more walks than strikeouts, which is just him completely outperforming his competition. But in AAA Durham this year, he's got more strikeouts than walks, so that's flipping the script a little bit. He's coming back down to earth. And by the way, let's not forget, the 2020 season aside, where there was no minor league ball and he had to spend the entire season at the alternate training site. He skipped Double-A. He went from I believe high A with the Charlotte Stone Crabs straight to AAA Durham. So he already did make a jump, and so that they want him to be, or Rays fans, people among baseball want Franco to be a big leaguer after playing maybe not even a game of AAA, as some were calling for him to make the opening day roster. And certainly when Adames was traded, it's time for Franco. With him playing 20 20 AAA games. To me, it just doesn't make any sense, and I think because Jared Kelenic got sent down recently and with Soto playing at the Trop, I just think it's an apt discussion to have, and I just wanted to get my thoughts on that as well. And to tie it all together and put a bow tie on the whole thing, as we've been saying, with how terrific Taylor Walls at 24 years old has been, he's certainly much more, I would imagine, of a polished player than Franco. And by the way, with Franco, I don't think anyone really could say that he had a terrific spring training. Watching his at-bats, and yes, it is spring, and it's always important not to take too much stock in those at-bats in February and in March, but he really struggled. It seemed like he was having difficulty working at-bats, and he was striking out more than maybe was characteristic of him. Yes, he hit the 500-foot home run in Port Charlotte, but there was a lot of struggles that came with that. Did not look maybe as good defensively even as was advertised, but it seems to that end he's a pretty finished product and what has the 80 grade arm, and is considered a terrific fielder and everything. And also let's not forget, when was the last time that this franchise really made a wrong step or a wrong move? Bringing up a prospect when they were going to do it, the situation they were going to. Really, the only move since I started really deeply following the Rays in 2018, the only false step I can recall is the signing of Yoshi Tsutsugo, and they, only gave him $12 million. It is consequential, but it's not the end of the day. It's not a deal. It's not the Mets signing Jed Lowry or anything like that. A big ticket free agent bust. So this front office, this organization has a track record of making smart, good, and what ultimately ends up being the right decision. So let's not doubt that. But also let's be thankful of Taylor Walls. And I hate that this is the conversation that I am really having on the night where he hits his first career homer. I think we have to have it. It needs to be said. But I hate for, and maybe this is my fault for kind of creating this narrative, but that this is kind of the shadow that Walls is playing in. No, he's his own player, and he's playing some really, really good baseball right now. So let's, certainly on a night where the Rays lose, let's celebrate something positive, and that's Walls with not only his first career home run, but also a really nice start to his big league career. So again, Taylor Walls, congratulations to you, a fellow Seminole. And that concludes our discussion of the lineup. There was, on a night where they score 7 runs in 11 innings, a lot more offers than you would like. Going from the top down, Austin Meadows 0 for 5, although he did work a walk, but the golden sombrero in there, not just the 0 for 5, but with 4 strikeouts. Brasso 0 for 2, but a sac fly, so not terrible. But Francisco Mejia 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts, an average that's now down to 240. Has definitely not looked himself since coming back off the injured list from the intercostal issue. Of course, it was a rib, I guess, protruding into the lung. He had difficulty breathing, so not only is that a scary position to be in, but I could imagine, healing from that would not be incredibly easy thing to do. And catcher is a tremendously difficult position to play. So Mejia certainly has got a lot of weight on his shoulders, but has been not good at the plate since coming back again off the injured list. 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts tonight. Of course, Brandon Lau 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. Brett Phillips 0 for 3 with 1 strikeout. So that concludes all the 0 for. So in the starting lineup, they had Margot, who was 0 for 5 as well, if I didn't mention that, with 2 strikeouts. So 1 0 for there. Meadows 2, Brasso 3, Mejia 4, Lau 5, and Phillips 6. So that is really bizarre. And yes, they did pinch hit for Brasso and Phillips at points in the game. But out of the 9-man starting lineup, and a night where not only you play 11 innings, but you score 7 runs on 8 hits, 6 out of the 9 in the starting lineup have offers. They don't get a single hit. So that is a little bit bizarre. You look at the runners in scoring position numbers. All of the following players went 0 for 2 with runners in scoring position. Austin Meadows, Francisco Mejia, and Manuel Margot. A couple of guys that cashed in. Wendell 1 for 1 with that RBI single with Arozarena at third in the 10th. Arozarena was 2 for 2, and he was certainly the player of the game, I think, tonight. And then outside of that, it was Phillips 0 for 1, Lau 0 for 1, and Brasso 0 for 1. So, and Diaz 0 for 1 as well. So, lots of guys, lots of situations to go around. They go 3 for 13 with runners in scoring position as a team and leave another 10 men on base tonight. They left 12 last night. So, that's certainly not a pattern that we would want to see continue. But as is the case with the Rays, and they've really picked up a lot of wins even with these kind of numbers. So, and this game obviously was there for the taking. They had the tying run in the 11th at second base and just were not able to drive him in. The Rays lineup as a whole, they strike out 13 times but do walk 7. And then you line this up with their 8 walks, 8 strikeouts last night. So they are walking a great deal. I would maybe put more of the emphasis on that with poor Nationals pitching than good Rays at bats, but certainly there are some guys right now that are walking a lot, and they should take credit. Yandy, of course, with his 2 walks, and no one else with more than one. I'm obviously not going to list off everyone who had a walk, but 13 strikeouts is certainly a number that's too high, and 40 total at bats tonight. They saw 209 pitches, only 118 were for strikes. So, really, that should be discussed more. Only half the pitches they saw were for strikes. And, yes, they did walk 7, so it's what, I need you to walk 7 more times. No, that's not necessarily reasonable, but, and yes, they scored 7 runs. So, I think ultimately, as I've spent, 45 minutes discussing tonight's game, it's ultimately, let's not get too carried away. It is, now June 10th. The Rays are still 15 games over 500. You're going to lose games, quite frankly. I know that's not really breaking news to anybody. So let's look at the positives, not just celebrating the career accomplishment for Taylor Walls, but also, the 7 runs is certainly good that they were able to rally 3 times throughout the course of the game, including in, the 7th and 8th. And also in the 10th, so that they were able to do it late in the game as well. And then maybe equally as impressive that they gave up a 2-run homer in the top of the first, respond with 3 runs of their own in the bottom of the first. So that was certainly a chance where the game could have gotten away from you a little bit, but that they were able to clap right back and get themselves back in the mix. Not only that, but take the lead and give that lead right back to Shane McClanahan. That's a big deal as well. So I think a lot of positives to be taken away. For Shane McClanahan, the starting pitcher, I already kind of said my piece on him. Through hittable strikes, this may have worked for him in AAA Durham, but just because you get 97 over the plate, that's not going to get major league hitters out by default. If you throw it middle down the heart of the plate, guys are going to make you pay, especially when you're facing guys like Juan Soto and, dare I say, Ryan Zimmerman, who's, easily on the back 9 of his career, but with a 2-home-run night shows the world that he has still got it. So, those guys are going to make you pay for making those kind of pitches. And then struggled a bit with the control, 77 pitches, 45 for strikes. And out of the 17 men he faced, established the first pitch strike to 10 of them, 10 of the 17. So that's not a ratio necessarily to bellyache about, but certainly room for improvement. And then out of the bullpen, Ryan Thompson struck out the side in the 4th. So, the last 5 batters that he's faced over the last couple of days, he struck all 5 of them out. And so Ryan Thompson is on one kind of a run right now. 17 pitches, 14 strikes, an ERA under 2 at 193, which is really cool to see as well. The last couple of days, going with the fastball up and into right-handers is not something we've seen a whole ton of, but it's certainly working for him. It's getting a ton of swing and miss, and when you're getting when you're facing a right-handed hitter and you've got the frisbee sliders going away, kind of down and away from him, and then you can run them up and in with the fastball, I mean, you're just going to have hitters dizzy, swinging out of their shoes, and that's exactly what Thompson's doing right now. Jeffrey Springs, a leadoff walk in the 5th, and followed that up with a cement mixer slider that ended up being a 2-run shot for Ryan Zimmerman that gave the Nationals a lead that, although the game was tied, really they never looked back. 393 feet to left. Made it 5-3 Nats in the 5th. And that's a pitch, obviously, he's got to make. The lefty Springs, surprisingly, has been better against righties than lefties, so a bit surprising that it did come against Zimmerman. And then also, important to note in that discussion, did walk the lefty Soto to lead off that inning, so maybe didn't want anything to do with Soto, but the guy that you get to, you give a home run to, so that's not great. I know Springs has been in the doghouse of a lot of Rays fans. I'm not quite sure exactly how to feel with him. I feel pretty much completely neutral. He's not a guy I want pitching in the back end of games. To me, he's the quintessential kind of 5th or 6th inning guy that comes in right after the starter, maybe having a short stint in a tie game or maybe you're trailing. Has a 354 earned run average, so for as a reliever goes, I would say that's fairly average, and I'm sure that's up quite a bit thanks to the 2-run outing and just an inning tonight. 27 pitches, 15 for strikes. He ended up striking out the next 3 men that he faced to get out of the 5th, but really the damage had already been done at that point. As I said, 3 really strong innings for McHugh where he strikes out 3. The breaking balls were snapping like crazy. The splitters, the curveballs, the sliders, and then the fastball was good as well. So an ERA under 3 for McHugh, and 3 really big innings in just 29 pitches. So he could really go as early, maybe following Hill on Saturday, but probably more likely maybe able to go after Fleming, or maybe even open for Fleming on Sunday afternoon against Baltimore. So, was not just able to get those 3 innings scoreless, but to do them so efficiently gives the team a bit of a boost as well. Andrew Kittredge came into the game in the 9th inning with the game tied, trying to give themselves a chance to walk it off in the bottom of the frame. And Kittredge puts the 9-1-2 hitters down in order, striking out 2 of them. And where they ran into a bit of trouble is where they try to bring them back out for the extra inning. With Josh Harrison at second base, they intentionally walk Juan Soto, righty and lefty. It makes sense that you don't want anything to do with him. But Ryan Zimmerman grounds out, but that makes it 2nd and 3rd with 1 out, and then you give up an RBI single to Yan Gomes. Thankfully, a pretty nifty play. I believe it was from the right fielder tonight, which was Manuel Margot, to get the ball and get it back in the infield quickly to keep the second run from scoring. But again, the damage had already really been done, and then he was out of the game at that point. He did leave an earned run, but the one that he gave up on his own was an unearned. In his inning in the 3rd, 14 pitches, 11 strikes, an ERA at 1.5. So he has been terrific, and I thought he was making good pitches, and really all it took, and that's what I'm saying. Maybe not. I am making an excuse for Andrew Kittredge because that's not an easy situation to come into. Runner at second, nobody outs. He says he enjoys that opportunity to do that, and I'm sure every reliever would tell you the same thing. But it's tough to, no reliever and extras these days should be taking a loss unless they really just have a meltdown. But Kittredge put the Rays in a bit of a tough situation. Going into the bottom of the 10th, they're able to come back. Finishing off the final 2 outs of the 10th, by the way, was Ryan Sheriff, and that was planned from the get-go, at least to my imaginations. After the intentional walk of Soto, Kittredge, the righty, faced the righty Zimmerman, the righty Gomes, and the fact that they weren't out of the inning by then, which would have been impossible really anyway, outside of a double play. The lefty Schwarber came up, and they bring in the lefty Sheriff to face him, and then the switch hitter Josh Bell. He gives up the sac fly to Schwarber to give the Nats a 2-run advantage in the 10th. But, again, really did the best he could. He faced 2 men, got them both out. So, I can't really complain much at all for that. And then in the 11th inning, they bring in Diego Castillo, against the 8-9-1 hitters, Starlin Castro, Victor Robles, Trey Turner. For a guy that we just applauded yesterday for having a nice outing and collecting his 10th save of the year, we really need him to get out of that 11th scoreless, and he ended up giving up 2 runs in the process. So in some ways, just because of the expectations that we have for him, he does kind of deserve the loss a little bit. There was a bunt single in there as well that made things a little bit tricky, but the first man that he faced, the 8-man Castro, the first pitch, and it was not a bad one, a sinker middle in, but something we've been tracking a little bit, the velo. And of course, the conversation with the sticky stuff is all up in the air right now. I'm not even going to broach that at this particular juncture. But last night he had velo, at 96, 97 on the sinker. Tonight it was at 92, or at least it was on that pitch that Castro doubled off of. So maybe the velo had an issue in that. So an RBI double, and then after that, Victor Robles reaches on a bunt single on a 2-1 count, and again was just throwing 92 with the sinker, and it was going to be tough to get anyone out, but Castillo did not field his position particularly well and allowed it to be runners at the corners with still nobody out. He strikes out Trey Turner, but then Josh Harrison hits a sac fly. Gave them all sliders in that at bat and just one middle. So the fact that it was only a flyout, and it was it was shallow, but it definitely could have been worse at least. And then struck out Juan Soto and threw a fastball at 94. So the velo, no doubt, was down tonight. And so that's probably the issue. That pitch at 92 to Castro, might have been the difference. If that's 97, I have a hard time believing with the kind of movement that sinker has that's a double. But that could be a little bit playing the what if game. So Castillo gets the loss tonight, and in some extent maybe does deserve it. If you're looking really to just place blame on someone, maybe it is Castillo because he has kind of the duty of being the closer. He relishes that role. He wants to live up to it, and so against the bottom of the order, the 8, 9, and 1 hitters, and Trey Turner, the leadoff hitter, is good, but it's not striking fear necessarily into anyone. You need to get out of that inning scoreless and give your team a chance to walk it off in the bottom of the 11th. And they didn't score any runs in the bottom of the 11th, but butterfly effect, you never know. Maybe they put a bump play on or something and end up getting the walk-off run. So that's really all I can say. Again, it's tough when you score 7 runs for this team. You really should be winning. But let's just chalk it up to being a funky night and celebrate the good things, and mainly Taylor Walls and his first career home run. That was really cool to see. Now turning the page to tomorrow's contest, or no, it is not tomorrow, as the Rays, they have an off day tomorrow. This 2-game set against the Nats, by the way, they split, bookended by off days. They will be back in action Friday night at 7:10 against the last place Baltimore Orioles. Baltimore this season is 22-39. They are 11-18 on the road, and the Rays 15 games over and a game and a half lead in first place are at 39-24, just 16-14 at home. These two teams faced off earlier, or not this month, but in the month of May 18th through the 20th, and it was a 3-game sweep as part of that 11-game win streak that they were on. In pretty impressive fashion, a 13-6 win in Game 1, a 10-1 win in the getaway game, and then sandwiched in the middle was a 9-7 win where there was some back and forth, and they had to, I believe, come back late. But really, never was that series, of course, in doubt, and Baltimore still in the midst of what is a long and dark-looking rebuild. I thought going into the year they would show a little bit more promise, a little bit more fight, but they still look like they are a long ways away. Going into the series, the Orioles, they got blown out by the Mets tonight. I think it was 12-1, but prior to that had won their previous 2. It looks like they're going to split that series against the Mets if it's a 2-gamer. And then they had won 2 out of 3 against the Cleveland Indians. So, including scoring 18 runs against Cleveland, and then the very next night scored 10 against the Mets. So maybe the offense, although they scored 1 tonight, are getting a little bit hot. Trey Mancini right now has 45 runs batted in. That is quite a bit. Cedric Mullins is at the top of the American League in hits, I believe, still with, I guess it doesn't give me how many hits he has, but he has a 327 average. And then Trey Mancini also leading the team in home runs with 11. In comparison, Austin Meadows leading the team with 14 home runs. The starting pitching matchup Friday night, Rays and Orioles, is the lefty Keegan Akin going for the O's, and for the Rays, it looks like it'll be Ryan Yarbrough getting the start outright. Looking at these two guys, we'll start with the Baltimore side, and I'm not sure that this has been officially announced, but this is what ESPN has as the pitching probables. Keegan Akin this year, the 26-year-old left-hander, no decisions for him and a 360 earned run average. It looks like he is an outright starter, but and he has faced the Rays as well. I can't believe I forgot that. His last time out, June 4th against Cleveland, he went 5 innings shutout, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, 3 hits, 86 pitches thrown. In his start against the Rays this year on May 20th, which was the getaway game on that afternoon, 3 innings, 2 runs on 5 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. So looking back there just to see who did the damage against him, May 20th, Brandon Lau had a single, Wendell a homer, Kiermaier a single, Arozarena a 3-run homer, Wendell a double, and that looked to be about it. So, Arozarena a homer, Choi had 2 walks, but he's not going to be playing. Lau a single, and then just to reiterate, Wendell with a home run and a double, so he'll definitely be in the lineup. Kiermaier with a single, reached base on an error. And then Brett Phillips as well worked a couple of walks against him as well. So, there are guys that had some success, so hopefully that will be the case. And, against another left-handed starter. So they have seen quite a bit of that lately, as that will be the third lefty in a row that they will start the game against. So kind of the same thing as far as the lineup goes. Brandon Lau will probably be in the lineup, I would imagine, so maybe Brasso ends up being the odd man out, as I think you would want to get Wendell in there as well because of what he did against Akin. And then the outfield kind of the same. Maybe you go Kiermaier instead of Phillips, but Phillips again had 2 walks against Akin, so maybe you kind of platoon it like you did tonight, and we'll certainly see that extent. I'll be there at the game as well, so that'll be fun to see another game in person. This season, the Rays starter Ryan Yarbrough, the 29-year-old left-hander, is 3-3 on the year with a 395 earned run average. It seems like he has established himself certainly as a starter. As his last time out, he went complete game for the first time in about 5 years for the Rays, where he gave up 2 runs on 6 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts. No walks over 9 innings. 113 pitches for Yarbies. So I'm surprised kind of that they decided to maybe not push him back as they push Glasnow back. But I'm sure he's good to go. He has faced the Orioles this year on June 19th in that 9-7 win. He went 6 innings in a no decision, 3 runs on 7 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, and that was a situation, 84 pitches in 6 innings, by the way. So that was a lot of at-bats that were over after about 1 or 2 pitches where he was putting the ball in play. Some for outs, yes, but also some for singles. That was part of that stretch also where he was just pitching away to right-handers, was not establishing the cutter up and in. And as I've been saying, for Yarbrough, the struggles really, to me, aren't opener versus, or rather starter versus bulkman, but rather, is he running the cutter up and into right-handers? And if so, he's going to have a start like he did last time, going a complete game against the Yankees. But if he's not, maybe more of those where he's given up, 3 or 4 runs or something and is done after 5 or 6. So that really is the deciding factor. And again, this O's team does have some decent hitters. Cedric Mullins, Trey Mancini, to name a couple. Trey Mountcastle always seems to do some damage against the Rays, perhaps, but again, none really striking some fear into you. So hopefully Yarbrough is poised for a fairly decent start. Also, we'll be on the air after the game on Friday after I scoot on home. So, and I apologize. The last couple of days, the late starts on the show is making my way back from Tropicana Field, getting off to a bit of a late start, but. I appreciate everyone who's been tuning in and calling in the last couple of days. It's been fun talking to some of you guys, and I always enjoy that. They did rearrange the starting rotation a little bit, pushing Glasnow back, did kind of jumble things up. So Yarbrough again is going to go on Friday. Saturday at 4:10, it's going to be Rich Hill, and then on Sunday it's going to be Josh Fleming, either starting outright as he did last time or against an opener, maybe Colin McHugh perhaps. And so the matchups, at least that we have right now, so Yarbrough, Akin on Friday, Rich Hill against Jorge Lopez on Saturday, and then Fleming against Bruce Zimmerman on Sunday. And, of course, we'll keep you posted on all that because, of course, we'll be on the air Friday. And I'll do the best that I can to be on Saturday and Sunday. We're not going to be on right after the game on Saturday and Sunday, but, kind of, 10 p.m. maybe or so around there. Kind of keeping the theme of being on, during the nighttime to keep that consistent. So at this point, let's put a wrap on the show. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. All the listeners we pulled in from the Rays Discord server, the Rays Reddit page. Anyone that's listening from there, do you want to hear more of me? Well, I would love that. Definitely follow us on Twitter at WHBC Official. Also follow this show page where you're listening to it right now on Spreaker.com. Either one of those, you'll get the show. You'll be notified right when we go live, so you'll get us right from the get-go. Thanks for everyone that's called in the last couple days. I know we've been on there with some late starts. Tough game for the Rays tonight, but hopefully they'll be back in the win column this weekend against the O's. We'll be back Friday night. We'll see you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC